What do we mean by God? In the last video, I discussed briefly how we can know by reason alone that God exists, because not only do all things, even space, time, and the universe, need a cause for their existence outside of themselves, but they also require something beyond them to sustain their existence. Being imperfect and contingent, they cannot continually impart existence on themselves, since no thing partakes fully in existence, but only has a share in it. In this video, I will attempt to further distill the idea of God. We know that we can arrive at the conclusion God exists through reason alone, because it had been done even as early as the pagan philosophers of Greece. Several came to the conclusion from experience that the physical world was changing, multiple, and imperfect. All things are contingent, or did not have to exist, and so required something outside of the changing world, something unchanging, one, and perfect in all ways, from which all these changing and unnecessary things receive their existence. Also, since the causes of things cannot be an infinite chain of causes, there must be some first cause, the very act of causing itself, that had to first set into motion all other causes. Without this foundational first cause, there would be nothing. Aristotle gave the world the ideas of act and potency. All things have parts of themselves that are actual, what is, and some that are potential, what could be. I am actually sitting, but I have the potential to stand, lay down, or do a backflip. I can't actualize all these potentials at once, but they are still there. So, like me, everything is a mix of act and potency, except God, who is pure act. The first cause of all things cannot change or lack anything, which is what a movement from potency to act is, and this is why we call God the very act of existence, and this is why he is necessary, for without a first necessary cause or actualizer of all unnecessary or potential things, there would not be a way for anything to exist at all. We must think of this causal chain as necessary or substantial, and not just accidental. An accidental causal chain is like that of a line of dominoes. If I pull out one of the fallen dominoes, the rest afterward continue to fall. But with a substantial causal series, the one that begins with God, it is like a computer which is held up by a table, which is held up by a building, which is held up by the foundation, then the earth, and so on and so forth. If one of these elements in the series is removed, the rest of the series crumbles. God, existence itself, is the end of all substantial causal chains, which must necessarily terminate in perfect being and existence, without which there is no being or existence, and that is what we call God. Some similar attributes should be seen now between the ancient philosophers' ideas of the One and our idea of God. In the Catholic tradition, we call these attributes God's perfections. 4 of these stand out for us here: God's omnipresence, omniscience, omnipotence, and omnibenevolence. As we have discussed, God is not some thing or a part of creation. The cause of all things cannot itself be a part of all things, and thus God is unlike all things. He does not just exist. Being the cause of all existence, he is pure act with no potency, pure being itself. As the ancient philosophers said, he is one, complete, unchanging, and perfect. Thus God exists, a fully perfect being beyond our limited comprehension, outside of the entire created world, space, time, the universe. But being existence itself in the very act that sustains us within creation, his spirit, for God obviously cannot be material, fully permeates all that he has made, down to its very core. It is purely from reason that we can understand this, for a being which is outside of space and time, indeed created them, cannot be limited by these things, but instead always fully comprehends all things in his timeless state. That is why we say in the Christian tradition that God knows and loves us more than we could ever know and love ourselves, for he is truly infinite, boundless, eternal, and perfect in every way. Because of these things, we call God omnipresent or all-present. Being the infinite creator of space and time, there is nothing that can contain him, and thus, as said above, he permeates all of his creation to the deepest and most intimate level. He fashioned everything from nothing but his own infinite actualized power, and thus knows all things in their fullness. And this is why we call God omniscient or all-knowing. Being the foundation of knowledge and truth, all knowledge and truth resides within God, and this for all eternity, since, as shown above, God does not change. This, God's divine law, is what sets the natural law, which does not deviate from God's will. From these things also follows that God is omnipotent or all-powerful, perfectly knowing and fully permeating all of that which he himself made. He has full reign over it all in such a way that without him continually holding us in existence, for we only share in existence, which is God, everything would cease to be. Having the power to create everything that exists from nothing, literally no thing at all, no tiny particles or proto-matter, is enough to show that he has the power to then do whatever he wills. Finally, the only way to understand a perfect being, who needed nothing yet freely chose to create something apart from himself, and to continue to hold it in existence, who must be so intimate with that creation as to be like a father to it, and one who is perfect in all ways, for all perfection has its origin in him. The only way to understand such a being is as omnibenevolent, or all good. For if God is perfect in all ways, he is perfectly good, for there is nothing greater than the good. Even Plato would say the greatest thing is the good itself, and this was to him like God. Thus we can know from reason alone that God must necessarily exist, and that this God is the God of Abraham that is worshipped by Christians, Jews, and Muslims. While further things like the Trinity of God require revelation from Jesus Christ, who will be discussed in the next video, we can know just through our own rational intellect that God is one, perfect, unchanging, and divine, and that he is all-present, all-knowing, almighty, and all-loving. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. That's the shot of faith for today. Thanks for watching. Peace.